Welcome to Yoga Psychology. The purpose of this presentation is to provide a clear outline of the main themes of yoga psychology and thereby open the door to further studies. As a prelude to our discussion, let us take a moment to contemplate the richness and diversity of human nature. From the moment we are born, we are destined to confront a myriad of issues so complex that generation after generation pass away without ever resolving them. What is it that makes us skeptical or religious, artistic, humorous, dangerous, or optimistic? How do you see the world? Despite the immense variety of worldviews, there are only two basic perspectives. One perspective involves the premise that all physical and psychological phenomena are the emergent properties of matter. Atoms combine together to make molecules, and molecules combine together to make, well, everything. Even our consciousness is the product of electrical activity in the brain. Let's unpack that premise and see what's inside. From this perspective, reality is fundamentally mechanistic. All the answers to the mysteries of human nature lie in the structures of matter. Thus, emotions, desires, and free will have no objective existence. Subjective existence, the sense of being one coherent individual, is a misperception produced by the random combination of billions of insentient particles in accordance with mechanistic laws. This perspective informs the discourse currently prevalent in the academic community. Now let's look at the world from another perspective. The yoga tradition, like many theistic and also non-theistic metaphysical traditions, holds that consciousness is categorically distinct from matter. The non-material conscious self is an observer of the actions and reactions of physical matter. As the sun situated in one place in the sky illuminates all directions by its rays, similarly, the self situated in one place animates the entire body with consciousness. When we unpack this premise, an entirely different value system emerges. Questions related to eternality, destiny, and ultimate purpose suddenly become the priority issues. Let's bring the two perspectives face to face. Where do your convictions lie? This is not the false dilemma of science versus religion. Here we are simply examining the directional nature of conviction itself towards a matter-based or a consciousness-based perspective. There is no empirical evidence to conclusively prove either perspective. The scientific data remains open to both interpretations. Thus, partiality towards either the mechanistic, matter-based perspective or the consciousness-based perspective is essentially a non-rational commitment. That non-rational conviction comes first, and then reason comes later to advocate upon its behalf. So why do we hold any particular worldview? If reason is not the reason, then what is? To answer that question, we'll have to come down to earth. People are complex beings. Still, we can safely say that particular tendencies predominate from person to person. Some have more inclination towards the arts, others towards violence or depression. The list of possible psychological tendencies goes on and on. Do all these feelings occur randomly, or is there some pattern? Are certain emotions connected with other emotions? If we were to discover some sort of sequence, could we formulate a map of consciousness? The yoga tradition says yes. A map of consciousness. An interesting notion. But how would we identify the terrain? What would constitute the directions and dimensions of such a map? Yoga is a Sanskrit word derived from the verb to yoke or join together. In the context of philosophy, the word yoga is also a technical term. The most famous ancient yoga text, Bhagavad Gita, defines yoga as a state of perfect equilibrium of mind. Similarly, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali define yoga as the complete restraint of fluctuations in the mind. The basic premise of yoga is that the mind is a subtle material interface through which the conscious spiritual self interacts with the physical world. The mind can be compared to the surface of a lake. When the water is still, it provides a clear reflection of one's face. Thus Patanjali writes, in yoga, or equilibrium of mind, the seer is situated in his own true nature. This is the state of enlightenment. If, however, the water of a lake is disturbed, one's reflection becomes distorted. Similarly, a fluctuating mind provides us with a distorted vision of reality. The Yoga Sutra defines the nature of that distortion as identification with the fluctuations. In other words, the conscious eternal self loses sight of his inherent spirituality and instead identifies himself with matter. At this point, two obvious questions arise. Firstly, what are the fluctuations of the mind? And secondly, what are the methodologies to overcome them? Yoga, or equilibrium, is lost when the mind fluctuates. Those fluctuations are of 3 degrees of intensity, namely mild, moderate, and intense. The mild degree of fluctuation is called sattva. Sattva is associated with clarity and serenity. The moderate degree of fluctuation is called the rajas. Rajas is associated with passion and creativity. The intense degree of fluctuation is called tamas. Tamas is associated with darkness and inertia. Sattva, rajas, and tamas are known collectively as the gunas. Owing to the popularity of yoga, all 4 of these Sanskrit terms have recently been assimilated into the English language and can be found in the Oxford English Dictionary. Just as all colors can be made from the 3 primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, similarly, all states of mind are the effects of the combination of the 3 gunas. Now we are ready to put together our map of consciousness. Let's begin at the bottom with tamas, the lowest level of consciousness. Tamas, the intense degree of fluctuation, is characterized by anger, intolerance, hatred, violence, the tendency to quarrel and to be miserly, laziness, fear, lamentation, dishonesty, depression, apathy, and addictions. On examining this group as a whole, it's clear that these characteristics are interrelated, as they usually do not occur in isolation. Rather, 2 or more occur simultaneously. Whenever you experience any of these emotions, it is to be understood that tamas, the intense degree of modification, is present in the mind. A person whose consciousness is predominated by tamas will be prone to drink and smoke heavily, stay awake at night, wake up late in the day, spend hours in front of the TV, eat a great deal of meat and junk food, bathe irregularly, bicker with others, and inhabit an untidy living space. Now let's rise up from tamas to rajas, the moderate degree of modification. Psychological tendencies arising from rajas include intense endeavor, pride, dissatisfaction, reductionism, material ambition, hedonism, the practice of religion motivated by material gain, belligerence, and a preoccupation with sex. Whenever you experience any of these tendencies, it is to be understood that rajas, the moderate degree of modification, is present in the mind. When rajas predominates, people are extremely energetic and industrious. Although they are likely to be materially successful, they remain internally dissatisfied. Being proud of their achievements, they are fond of hearing their own praise, and they feel justified in ridiculing or marginalizing others. They prefer food that is hot and spicy and drinks that are ice cold. They are predisposed to reductionistic thinking without recognizing its limitations. The moderate degree of fluctuations, rajas, impairs the ability to distinguish between the light of consciousness and the thought patterns illuminated by that consciousness. At this level, the mechanistic matter-makes-consciousness paradigm seems to be self-evident. Now let's rise up to sattva, the mild degree of modification. Psychological tendencies arising from sattva include peacefulness, sense control, truthfulness, generosity, responsibility, fine powers of discrimination, humility, tolerance, detachment, compassion, contentedness, and faith in the existence of the soul. When sattva predominates, one can readily discriminate between one's timeless consciousness and the temporary coverings of the body and the mind. Although a person affected by rajas may theoretically accept the existence of the soul, he has no practical realization. In sattva, the nature of consciousness is self-evident. All the virtues that comprise goodness come naturally to a person in sattva. Now we will look at a summary of our map of consciousness. This unique paradigm of yoga psychology has the versatility to account for all of the complexities of human nature. It should be noted that all three gunas coexist within the mind in variable proportions. Thus, the lower region of the map indicates a level of consciousness that is not entirely tamas, but predominated by tamas. Similarly, the middle and higher portions represent a preponderance of rajas and sattva respectively. Let's consider the relationship between the three levels. It is important to recognize that rajas is unstable. The intense activities impelled by rajas invariably result in a drop down to the fatigue and inertia of tamas. Those in rajas tend to be successful, but eventually burn out mentally and physically. One can find innumerable examples of this among popular celebrities in entertainment and sports. Everyone likes to think that they are free and independent. However, according to yoga psychology, the choices and activities one performs in daily life are dictated by the proportions of sattva, rajas, and tamas in the mind. Just as a man who moves with the current of a river cannot realize the power of that current until he tries to swim against it, similarly, one who goes with the flow of life cannot understand how he is controlled by the gunas until he tries to swim against their current. When he attempts to adopt the habits associated with a higher guna, he will meet with intense resistance from his own body and mind. For example, a person in tamas prefers to sleep late, eat junk, smoke, and so on. He feels as if he is living according to his own free choice. However, if he were to try to adopt the habits associated with sattva, by conquering his addictions, rising early in the morning, and eating healthy vegetarian food, he would experience a formidable psychological and physical resistance. A person may not notice the presence of law enforcement until he breaks the law. Similarly, one cannot be aware of the gunas until one tries to contradict them. Yoga practice contradicts the gunas and thereby allows the student of yoga psychology to develop first-hand experience of the dynamics of sattva, rajas and tamas. Take a moment to consider where you would locate yourself on the map. What can you learn about yourself and others by applying the hypothesis of yoga psychology? Before moving on to the methodologies of yoga, let's draw out some of the implications of yoga psychology and see how they might impact our interpretation of important issues. The search for happiness and fulfillment motivates all human endeavor. In Rajas, one feels that sensory pleasure is the cause of happiness. However, absorption of the mind in sensory pleasure intensifies Rajas, along with its psychological aftermath of dissatisfaction and ultimately depression. Thus one becomes trapped in the tragic cycle of repeatedly mistaking the cause of one's dissatisfaction for a source of further happiness. This, in essence, sums up the plight of humankind in today's consumer society. Philosophers are primarily concerned with ideas. Yoga psychology suggests that all rational ideas are simply constructed to support the non-rational convictions we hold as a result of our level of consciousness. Thus, yoga psychology allows one to go beyond the superficial realm of philosophical ideas to identify their root causes, namely the degrees of mental fluctuation. Is morality relative or universal? Yoga psychology suggests that an activity is moral only if it elevates the consciousness. Therefore, behavior deemed appropriate would be relative to one's level in the gunas. For example, those in tamas can uplift their consciousness by adopting the habits associated with rajas, but those in sattva would degrade their consciousness by the very same habits. Thus, yoga psychology provides the foundation for a universal, yet context-sensitive morality, as opposed to oppressive one-size-fits-all value systems. Is religion a cause of peace or a cause of conflict? Yoga psychology brings clarity to the discussion by showing that people from both religious and secular backgrounds are peaceful when they're in sattva, contentious when they're in rajas, and violent when they're in tamas. Thus, the peace and stability of mankind depends on the culture of sattva, which is possible in the context of any religious or secular background. These are just a few examples of the far-reaching implications of yoga psychology on personal and social levels. In what ways could this paradigm inform your interpretation of other fields such as education, political strategy, arts, and the media? Returning to our map of consciousness, as you can see, yoga is both the name of the state of equilibrium beyond sattva and also the name of the process to attain it. Where you are on the map of consciousness is not nearly as important as where you are going. Yoga provides 4 main methodologies to elevate one's consciousness through and beyond the influence of the gunas. We will summarize them one by one. Karma Yoga means the yoga of duty. Karma Yoga can be practiced easily by anyone at any time. This method involves adherence to the responsible performance of one's duties in life, while carefully observing the fluctuations of one's mind. In this state of objective self-awareness, one becomes habituated to cultivate the characteristics of sattva and to let go of the reactions of rajas and tamas as and when they arise. In this way, every moment of life becomes transformed into valuable yoga practice. Jnana Yoga means the yoga of knowledge. This method involves an analytical study of matter, the mind and consciousness, and also a search for the eternal by the gradual negation of the temporary. The theoretical conclusions are then applied through ascetic practices. Ashtanga Yoga refers to the eightfold practice as described by the sage Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra. The first practice involves 5 kinds of self-restraint: non-violence, non-lying, non-stealing, continence, and non-possessiveness. The second practice involves 5 observances: cleanliness, contentment, austerity, study, and surrender to providence. The third practice involves various sitting postures, and the fourth breathing exercises. Collectively, the first 4 of the 8 practices are called Hatha Yoga, which is currently popular in health clubs throughout the world. Hatha Yoga prepares one physically for the final 4 practices that aim at spiritual perfection. The 5th practice involves withdrawing one's attention from sensory activities in order to attain the 6th stage, concentration. When concentration intensifies, it becomes meditation, and when meditation deepens, it becomes samadhi or trance. In trance, the eternal conscious self finally becomes liberated from misidentification with the temporary physical body and mind. The 4th methodology for raising the consciousness up to sattva and beyond is called Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. The Bhakti Yoga tradition posits that all individual conscious selves emanate from the Supreme Conscious Self, just as innumerable photons emanate from the sun. The root cause of all fluctuations in the mind is indifference to that Supreme Self. Thus the fluctuations automatically subside without extraneous endeavor for one who develops an attitude of love towards the divinity. In Bhakti Yoga, the stages of concentration, meditation, and trance outlined in the Ashtanga Yoga system are easily and naturally attained by devotion to the Supreme Consciousness, expressed through the arts such as poetry, music, drama, dance, and architecture. Thank you for watching Yoga Psychology, the Foundational Course. I look forward to seeing you again in the intermediate and advanced courses.